Things off, shall we? So, guys, again, welcome. You are just to make sure you're joining the right session. Happened to me in college before. I was in the wrong classroom. You are joining the Tech for Good session. I'm Jed, Senior Operations Manager, and we're happy to have you here. So, as we kick things off, let's introduce TechSoup a bit first. Now, you're all, I believe, members of TechSoup or have come across TechSoup one way or the other. We're essentially a nonprofit, just like you guys. Our key mission is to support fellow nonprofits, just like you guys. The way we do that is by bridging you to tech resources, whether that's discount or donations, training, services, or guidance. That's what we do. We help fellow nonprofits, just like us, to be able to increase and amplify their social impact through technology. So, the people leading today's session is, you've already been hearing a lot about me. I'm Judd. I'm Senior Operations Manager for Asia Pacific. I am a real boy. I think it's worth mentioning that now I am not AI generated. And I can evidence that by probably a toddler coming out of my room later. So I've been working with TechSoup for about 10 plus years. I lead some of our projects, particularly digital transformation projects that does assessments, consultations for nonprofits. I 100% run on black coffee, but if you have coffee recommendations, I'd be happy to hear it over chat. Joining me, I'm very lucky because they are very busy people. Joining me today are Anne and Lee. And Lee, if you can just go on mute and say hello and quick introductions, that would be awesome.
Hey guys, I hope everyone is having a good day so far. I'm Anne and I'm happy to join you today.
And hi, I'm Lee, and I'm based in Taiwan. So happy to see everybody here today. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. I'm very fortunate that they can join me. They are essentially the leaders of TechSoup's operations. For some questions I may not be able to answer, I'm thankful that they're here to back me up. So, moving forward, so what do we want to talk about today, really? We are dividing this session into three key sections. The first one is the fundamental question: how can our nonprofit begin to leverage technology? TechSoup focuses on enabling nonprofits through technology, but that's more often than not easier said than done. If you're struggling with the same question, we're here to help you. And to unpack that, we want to start by first identifying, well, what are the known priorities? Known priorities are we'll use data. We'll use data that we've gathered through different studies and different assessments that we've run. We'll compile everything and identify what challenges do nonprofits face where technology could be an asset, right? So we'll start with that. But let's be honest, digital transformation or the effective incorporation of technology for your operations, sometimes it's not just about things that you know you need support with. Sometimes it's also about things that you don't know. There are issues or unknown challenges that impact you. That being said, we'll also try to unearth these invisible challenges. And at the end of it, we want to use those insights to chart your path. In charting your path, what we want to do for you is we want to lay out the resources available for you. And also, we want that to be an open discussion. If there are services offers that you don't see in our programs, this is the platform to raise those because we're here to actually try to find these donors, right? In that last bit, we want to package all of these resources up and map them towards the challenges that you're facing, so you have a clear direction moving forward, right? So let's kick things off. Let's start with the known priorities. The reason why we're kicking this off is because of this eternal promise that we typically see in all of these tech talks and whatnot. Essentially, whenever a new solution is released, the biggest selling point for nonprofits is that, hey, this new app, this new platform, it will help us streamline operations while effectively scaling impact. One way or the other, it always boils back to this message. But let's be honest, that's not really easy to do, you know? And there are three key reasons why that's typically difficult for us. us meaning nonprofits. The first one is limited funding. While there are a lot of generous providers out there that offer licenses or donation or apps for free or at a discount, that's not necessarily the only thing we need to consider. We also need to consider the costs of supporting them, meaning the people who will set it up, the people who will train us, and so on and so forth. Those key things that challenges adoption of new solutions. As promising as they are, we're going to hit that roadblock immediately, right? On top of that, there's also limited to no IT support for most of us. Uh, a lot of the challenges we often encounter, particularly if there's a launch of new solutions, is that, well, we really don't have that in-house expertise to set that up. Again, another immediate blocker that's sorry, I'm using immediately a lot of times here, preventing you from adopting and also incorporating technology, emerging technology to your operations, right? And finally, let's say, well, we got over the first two issues. Then here is the last one. While some of us may be able to implement new technology in our operations, there's always this issue about actual adoption and utilization. And what typically prevents us, meaning nonprofits, from fully realizing that is really our overstretched capacities. Let's be honest. We work very busy days. We are a nonprofit ourselves. An 8-hour day is a good day because typically we spend more than that on a working day. That that is not just an issue about capacity, that also hinders us from spending time to invest and to study new emerging solutions that we can explore, right? So taking all of these three issues, it really challenges the notion of whether technology can help us, because at the very beginning, we're already challenged and prevented from adopting it. Again, because of these three typical issues that we encounter, right? So the message here is, well, TechSoup is here to help. TechSoup is here to A, give you access to discount and donations. We gather donors from leading emerging technology providers, Microsoft and whatnot. We gather that into a central platform where you can qualify and access them at a low cost. In a way, kind of like going over that access issue or that funding issue. Second, we have expertise not only in technology, but also with the nonprofit sector. And that's not often emphasized in our messaging. That being said, we understand the challenges that you face. We understand the nuances of operating as a nonprofit because we ourselves are one. One of the key services we've started investing on is really adoption services. I mean, not like child adoption, but rather technology adoption, training, consultations, online courses. We've started developing more content to help you adopt and utilize emerging solutions. Doing so in a context that is specific to nonprofits. And finally, rather new arm in our programs is advisory. We have experts, myself, Lee, and Anne included. Again, we're not just experts in technology, we're experts within different fields, different fields where you can apply technology. And that's why we're here. We're here to run consultations for you. We're here to help you refine a transformation plan, an implementation project, and so on. We offer all of these services for nonprofits. Now, in most cases, you can say, oh, well, that's great. We can end the session here, la-di-da, or we will go happily, we'll go merrily our own way. But the reality is that's not really that this is not really the golden bullet, right? Because for a lot of us, we're actually struggling with one more fundamental question that regardless of us offering you access, adoption, advisory services, there's still one more fundamental issue that may prevent you from moving forward. And that's this one. Where do we begin? Well, that's great. You have a catalog full of services and licenses. Well, how do we get started? How do we get started with leveraging technology? This is by far probably the most common question I would get when we run digital transformation projects. Like, that's cool, but how do we get started? Now, if you're struggling with the same issue, I assume you are because you're joining us here. We'll try to answer this in an evolving process. first, like I mentioned earlier, let's first try to draw inspiration from research. We've done a lot of research projects in collaboration with partners. Let's try to use that as a basis to just create an image of what exactly should we prioritize if we're not sure how to get started, right? So let's kick off there. So what we'll use is a study that we ran with our partner Info Exchange. Info Exchange is TechSoup's partner in Australia and New Zealand. What we've done was that we've surveyed about 1,500 nonprofits across Asia Pacific, across 12 countries in APAC. And what we really just wanted to understand was, well, what is your relationship with technology? What are you using? Do you feel comfortable using it? What are your priorities? What are your gaps? Now, this gives us a very interesting insight as to what are nonprofits' main priorities. And I want to share these with you. And it's interesting to start with this one because it might create a direct path towards answering that question immediately, right? Like, where do we begin? So, based on this study, essentially, there are two categories of priorities for a nonprofit. Category one is what exactly do we want to invest in? Meaning, what new tool should we invest in? And category two is what are the training or upskilling priorities we want to spend time and effort on? For category one, which is new solutions, almost everybody answered, well, we want to update our website. 53% of responses shared that their key priority was, hey, we want to our web presence is getting stale now. We want to update it. And interestingly enough, the least prioritized was online delivery of services. What that means is digitizing the way you provide your programs. If it's an education or a tutorial system, it's pivoting towards more digital means, right? So in terms of introducing new technology, it was websites that were at the top of the priority list. Now, in terms of training, the biggest one was really cloud migration and administration. Training-wise, the interesting thing here is that a lot of nonprofits remain behind in terms of migrating to a nonprofit cloud solution. And when we say a nonprofit cloud environment, these are centralized environments such as Microsoft 365, Google Workspace that gives you a secure and more efficient platform to work on, right? The key training topics specifically were being able to learn how to plan the migration process and understand what that process entails. And the second part of it was the maintenance of it all. Like, yes, it's great that we got access to it, but it's another thing to actually maintain this moving forward, right? So those were the two key ways that we've interpreted cloud migration and administration. So essentially, moving forward from that data point, there were other data points that actually painted these priorities in a different light, kind of like giving us different flavors of how to interpret that information. The first one was, while a lot of nonprofits prioritize websites, there was also a significant bunch that were already or had pivoted to social media as their primary marketing kind of like primary communications platform, which was interesting because does that create an argument behind, do we still need a website? Could we get by with just a social media presence moving forward? These are the things that you want to ask as we go deeper into these data points. The second one was a very interesting one. One of the key reasons that really painted why cloud migration was a key training topic was because of this. 55% of respondents back then haven't migrated to a cloud workspace yet, whether that's Microsoft or Google or other platforms. That hasn't occurred yet. So, and more so, one of two organizations, regardless of whether they're already operating in a cloud environment or not, felt like they didn't have adequate access to solutions, skills, or platforms that enabled them to work remotely or at home. So we're kind of getting a clearer picture now of what these priorities are, what challenges you might be able to relate to that can help you refine your approach towards digital transformation, right? So basically, it presents you that communications and productivity and collaboration are essentially the key areas of concern. These might immediately relate to you, but let's go through further. Now, one of the key things we want to explore was that, hey, that report was published 2 years ago. A lot has changed between 2023 and today. AI has become a bigger resource than we initially anticipated. Cybersecurity has become an ever-changing need, right? So do they still hold true? Well, interestingly enough, and if you remember, when you were registering for this webinar, we actually asked you, well, what are your priorities? What are the questions or tech needs that you need? Interestingly enough, it actually coincided, but just in some cases painted again different angles. What we're trying to point out here is that the needs from 2023, while they remain true to its core, it's evolved to a somewhat different interpretation. In terms of communication, communication was still a recurring need for a lot of people. It was still one of the more popular need brought up across the registration for this webinar. But it was communication not solely in terms of website or social media. It was communication, but within the angle of data. Well, what are we doing how can we use data to actually help us refine our communication strategies? And above that, I may also add, what are we doing to actually capture that data, right? So interestingly enough, communications remained as a challenge, but now with a different angle of effectively incorporating data behind it. And in terms of productivity, yes, collaboration remained as a critical function, critical need, but less so now in terms of cloud environment, but now more towards digitizing operations. What this interestingly painted was that when we say digitizing operations, you were phrasing it or elaborating it towards automations, introduction of automations, and also what it means for your cybersecurity. So essentially broadening that scope of not just cloud. We don't just want to move to the cloud. We want to move to the cloud in order to achieve X, Y, and Z. Those being introduce automations, streamline your operations, and doing so within a secure environment, right? So it's interesting how these needs evolve, right? So from here, do we now pose the question? So is that the easy answer to this bigger question, Jeff? Is communications and cloud productivity the beginning of digital transformation? Is that the way we want to move forward? Yes, if that relates to your priorities. But before you make that decision, perhaps we want to explore another angle to this, right? Because one other data point that we can explore is something more intimate, and we'd like to provide you with data points to flesh out possible different angles to this. And that's this. What do we not know? What are the concerns, issues, and challenges that we're actually not aware of? For us to be able to incorporate this question in a larger digital transformation process, we want to go back to tech needs assessments. TechSoup has been delivering tech needs assessments for the past few years now. This is a new service we've delivered as part of digital transformation projects. Now, the way we do that is we talk to a nonprofit for a couple of sessions, we give them a report, and that report essentially talks to you about your essentially your ability to utilize and also your choice of solutions for 5 key areas, those being security, productivity, marketing, and so on and so forth. We'll deep dive into that a little later. The reason why we want to go back to a tech needs assessment is that it creates a more holistic picture. The data points that I shared with you earlier were essentially priorities that you, nonprofits themselves, have vocalized towards us. These are needs that you are already aware of. These are needs that were able to immediately communicate back to us. The way I would debate that, however, is that, well, more often than not, those are the only things we can actually see, right? The things that are urgently in need. Sometimes a problem is bigger than that. So the bigger question is, Should we move forward with just communications and productivity? Will that be addressing the root cause of our problems, right? In most cases, yes, but in some cases, no. And that's why we want to use the data from our digital assessment. Well, it's a summary of the assessments we've facilitated in order to paint a more deeper and more intimate picture. And we'll see how it aligns or doesn't align with these with the needs reflected in the report, right? So moving forward, this is how we would normally do an assessment. Right? We would talk to a nonprofit. We would talk to them about the tools that they use, how comfortable they are, do they feel like they're using it to its full extent, and so on and so forth. We would essentially raise that question for five, we call it 5 key areas of operation. Your productivity is the tools that you use on a day-to-day basis to communicate and collaborate. Good example is your email, your chat system, your file storage, and whatnot. Second part is program delivery. These are tools that you use or are critical in delivering your services. A good example of this is a task management system, right? Task management system, do you run any custom apps to help you deliver, say, your mental health care offers, your tutorials, and whatnot? Marketing and cybersecurity, I would say, are quite straightforward, And finally, data management. Data management covers data across your entire operations. It's not just your impact data. It also talks about the tools that you use to collect information about your beneficiaries, your donors, volunteers, talks about your databases, your reporting processes, and so on. So essentially, when we do an assessment, we'll ask questions about all of these 5 key areas. The goal is that for you to score between 3 and higher. So we use a 5-point grading scale here. 3 is the passing grade, and for us, that's the safest area. 5 is like the best. But let's be honest, 5 is kind of like the perfect state. That doesn't really exist. That being said, 3 for us is the ideal case for any nonprofit. Okay. Now, what we've done, I've collated all of our recent assessment data from 2022 to 2025, and I tried to create an average to see, okay, well, in terms of if we were going to prioritize, naturally, we're going to prioritize the most challenging area. But out of these summaries, out of these averages, what exactly was the picture being painted here? And that's what I want to present to you. The first part is this. Productivity and data, they are the relatively strongest suite for most nonprofits we've communicated with. And that's pretty interesting for me. Like average of 2.79 for data management, 2.32 for productivity. Very, very close to 3, to be honest. It's almost like one training away from getting a 3. The reality is these are stronger suits because they actually overlap with one another. The way we manage data is typically using tools already present in our productivity suite. Excel, essentially. Excel, Power BI, Looker Studio, Google Sheets. Those have been critical to us. And on top of that, those are very accessible because of offers such as Microsoft for nonprofits and Google Workspace for nonprofits, which are accessible 100% for free, right? But the interesting thing is that despite these 2 areas being the relatively strongest suite across strongest areas across the 5 areas of operation, they're also the highest prioritized areas. There's always this intention or message from a nonprofit that we feel like we're behind. We feel like this is inadequate. It's actually echoing the results of the survey where they may be operating in a cloud system, but they still feel inadequate because of, for a number of different reasons. So it was interesting why, even when they were self-reporting priorities before we gave results, they were identifying these 2 key areas, their strongest areas, as their priority 1. Now, moving from that, delivery and marketing was kind of like the middle ground. It's, I would say, the middle child in terms of priorities. It's often predominated by what we refer to as manual processes. A very good example is in marketing. Rather than using an email marketing system, you would send out emails directly from your own inbox connected to a Google Sheet. Well, that's fine and all. It is still a manual process. Now, interestingly enough, while these are manual, these are take a lot of effort to run, these are also less prioritized to change. And the key barrier that is typically communicated to us was its possible implications. If we move from, say, Google Sheets and Gmail to, say, MailChimp, what will that mean in terms of engagement? So it's that fear of change in these areas. Essentially, it's the embodiment of we're okay, we're getting by. That should be enough for now. Now, finally, cybersecurity is the most challenged area. And we fully understand why. It is a particularly complex subject. Uh, and the interesting thing here is that while this is the most challenged area, this also feels like the area where a lot of nonprofits were already asking the right questions. It's just that they're not able to identify how to actually move forward from there. Those three interpretations or questions being, okay, what can I introduce in our system to strengthen our passive, I would refer to it as passive security, tools that essentially detect issues and what's this, vulnerabilities for you. Second is, what can we do to strengthen our behaviors? And finally, how do we manage this general anxiety? Because in reality, whenever we talk to nonprofits about cybersecurity, there's always that challenge to actually communicate what exactly are we afraid of. And that's rightfully so, because again, it is such a complex subject, right? So all in all, these are quite interesting data points to put side by side with the research I've shared with you earlier. But Jed, you're rambling a bit here. You may be wondering. So the question is, how do these all fit together, really? These are all interesting, but we're not really getting the point here. The point is this. If we put these together, it's now creating a more clear picture as to what we could prioritize in terms of digital transformation, right? The first one, and we've already mentioned this earlier, the need for data-driven communication strategies, right? The second is the inadequacy or that feeling of inadequacy in our operations. And finally, the overwhelming nature of cybersecurity. Now, as we package all of these data points up, let's now try to clearly communicate what these priorities are. So moving forward, the way we want to reinterpret these questions or relay this new question is first, stories with and using data. As we've gone from a need for a new website towards a need to be able to leverage data for communications, the bigger question now is what exactly is our relationship with data, right? Platforms like a website, your social media presence, email marketing systems, they will forever be there. But the bigger, more fundamental question in this case is what exactly are we doing to capture data? So perhaps this is one of the key areas that you want to focus on first. And it's essentially evolved from just having a passive web presence towards creating engagement through digital media, essentially establishing ways to effectively capture stakeholder data and use that to actually inform strategies moving forward. So perhaps that's one of the key goals that you can work towards. The second is actually challenging the need to update our tech stack. When we talk to nonprofits, particularly from a productivity perspective, there's always this question of newer is better. While that remains true, that may not necessarily apply now when you're in the cloud suite, when you're in a cloud suite such as Google Workspace and Microsoft for nonprofits, because those will update on its own, right? And as we unpack that conversation further, it wasn't necessarily what we realized was that it wasn't necessarily the licenses. It was a misguided or misinterpretation of the actual need. It wasn't the need to update the licenses, it was rather a need to update the skill set. Because as accessible as these donations may have been, the bigger challenge was exactly what do we do once we get it? And that is a challenge that many of us struggle with because not a lot of us have IT people. And for those among us that are fortunate enough to have an IT team, they're usually often far too stretched to think about upskilling opportunities. So these are the things that we want to think about. Rather than looking at just a license-based need for productivity, it's more about an upskilling issue. What are we doing to essentially upskill our staff to be able to leverage that immediately accessible environment. And on top of that, be able to also maintain that moving forward, right? So that may be another key goal that you can focus your efforts on. And finally, if you feel like security is the bigger issue for you, which I would rightfully support, the other thing that you want to think of is the costs of security and the costs and security. The reason why I articulate it that way is because, like we mentioned earlier, the nonprofits that have asked about security, they were on the right track. They were identifying that we've gone beyond security as a passive measure. Before, the bigger conversation is about, okay, what is the best antivirus that I get, and that's about it. We've gone cybersecurity as a conversation point has gone too far enough away from that perspective. It's now more behavioral, actually. What are we doing to be able to identify phishing attempts? How do we identify that this is a fraudulent person that's impersonating somebody? It's more behavioral now rather than it is technical. I would always argue it's an interplay of both, but behaviors are a key ingredient. That being said, what we want to understand now is if cybersecurity is your main priority, then you may want to approach that three different ways. Okay, what are the passive measures that we're using? Passive measures meaning are our licenses up to date? What are our security licenses? That's always going to be critical. But I also want to highlight two other critical questions, such as letter B to that is what are we doing to upskill our staff? And letter C, what are we doing to be able to hear out from our staff what these anxieties actually are? Because essentially, for you to be able to be effective in cybersecurity, you have to have a clear threat of what is likely to happen and what is the most urgent issue. And for you to be able to identify that, you really just need to have a conversation, whether as a team or with us. It's really just bringing all of these anxieties, putting it on a piece of paper, and starting to see the commonalities, right? And we can build from there. So, all in all, these are the three key challenges of a nonprofit, or common challenges any nonprofit is facing, which I think would be interesting for you if you're exploring how to kickstart your digital transformation, right? It's your ability or the interplay between data and communications. It's your ability to be upskilled within your existing environment as opposed to just focusing on what's new. And finally, being able to unpack and unravel the complexities of cybersecurity. So these are the three key goals, perhaps could drive forward your digital transformation conversations. So that's about it for the second part. Let's move towards home stretch now. Well, what can we do? What steps can we take forward? And that's where we come in. We offer all of these services, but I want to walk you through some of them that might ring a bell or might be of interest for you. So naturally, I want to circle back. In TechSoup, we focus on three key themes: access to the affordable or low-cost licenses, adoption services to ensure that you're actually able to leverage these new licenses that you acquire, and advisories such as consultations and assessments for you to be able to navigate the complexities of technology as a whole, right? So in order to do that, let's now reintroduce TechSoup. For most of you, you may know us about Microsoft because they're our best friends and they've been supporting us for our entire 30-year existence, right? In most cases, nonprofits approach us to acquire low-cost Windows, low-cost Office, or qualify for Microsoft for nonprofits. These are the typical reasons why we have conversations. But in reality, we offer so much more than just that. So if we were to anchor what we're going to present on those three key fundamental questions, such as data-driven communications, cybersecurity, and so on, well, that would be an easier way for me to reintroduce TechSoup. Starting with communications, we actually have a lot of different donor partners that can support. We have Wix, which is the probably the easiest website service that you can acquire. If you're able to create a PowerPoint, I'm pretty sure you'd be able to create a Wix website. So we do offer discounted offers from donors such as Wix, Hootsuite, which is their social media platform. It can allow you to centrally manage multiple platforms at once, such as, say, if you run a Facebook page, an X account, and so on. You can connect all of those to Hootsuite so that you can track and deploy campaigns effectively. And Constant Contact, which is an email marketing solution. What this presents is that it's allowing you to have a more a more efficient way of managing web presence, but at the same time, giving you platforms that can actually leverage data that you can access and data that you can reinterpret into strategies. Very good example is Hootsuite can give you reports on engagement. You can use that to inform your schedules moving forward. Constant Contact tracks engagement, such as clicks, opens, and whatnot, for you to create tailored mailing lists or even to personalize your campaigns and so on. So that's one offer. Another thing is being able to give you passive security, such as access to low-cost antiviruses such as Bitdefender and Norton. And we also have Arctera, which is a backup solution. You can use that to back up your servers and on-premises data as well. Essentially, while cybersecurity is both behavioral and technical, this at least answers one part of that equation without a high cost, right? We hope this makes it more accessible for you. So I just also want to highlight some products may only be available in specific regions. And in cases like that, talk to us. We'll be happy to explore outside the TechSoup catalog as well if there are any direct donations that we can find that meets your needs, right? Moving forward, outside of that, there's also the need to upskill. And for us to be able to do that, we actually offer a couple of programs. TechSoup Courses is one. It's a separate platform from your TechSoup program. But in TechSoup Courses, what you'll see are online self-paced courses that tackle both tech topics such as AI, data management, analytics, and so on, but also more thematic topics such as fundraising 101, digital marketing 101, connecting to donors and whatnot. So it's a combination, it's essentially an entire library that combines both thematic and technical topics all in one place, all relevant and created within a nonprofit context. And second, we also facilitate ongoing digital cybersecurity training. In the US and other regions, we use KnowBe4. In Asia, we've tested with Fin. Fin offers you about 5 to 10-minute courses all about cybersecurity. And we can deploy that maybe once a month, once every 2 weeks, so that your staff has ongoing access to education without demanding far too much from them, right? It's constant exposure that will drive on learning. So we do have these educational programs to strengthen your upskilling, regardless if it's a technical issue or more of a thematic one. And finally, for those of you struggling with little to no IT activities or capabilities, we're here essentially as a sounding board. We offer free consultations. Talk to me, talk to Lee, talk to Anne. Whatever that is, we'll find a way to get over that hump. We'll look for services outside and within TechSoup or other third-party providers that can support nonprofits at a low cost. Outside of that, we also provide cloud setup and migration, meaning if you don't have access yet to Google Workspace or Microsoft 365, well, we can set that up for you remotely, right? And actually securely migrate your histories from whatever tool you're using to these new platforms. And finally, we also run digital resilience programs. Digital resilience programs are holistic interventions, typically between 6 to 12 months. This is where we run assessments, we identify a roadmap for you to address your challenges and goals, and we deliver the training services as part of that package. Now, if you don't want to go through a 6 to 12-month process, that's okay. Maybe just take an assessment. That's at least one way to create structure to your digitization efforts, right? And finally, all of these culminate into programs such as these. I know AI is the hot topic at the moment, and we actually have programs specifically for that. We're, again, with our awesome partner, Info Exchange. Lee is also my constant collaborator here for this program. We run the Asia Pacific AI nonprofit learning community with Info Exchange. Part of that is a community forum where you can communicate with experts like ourselves or fellow nonprofits about AI. Also, a ton of webinars. That's also part of that. A ton of free webinars on a weekly basis, all accessible for nonprofits like you, and all 100% for free. That's funded by google.org. But even though it's funded by google.org, we cover topics there ranging from Gemini to Copilot to ChatGPT and more. It's not limited to just Google. In fact, part of that, Lee and I are running a 6-week webinar series on Gemini. We're on session 3 next week. You're free to join. You can still catch the recordings for 1 and 2, and we'd be happy to have you there and in the other webinars for us. That being said, digital transformation is, while it sounds difficult, it's actually pretty easy. All you need to do is just identify what exactly it is that you need first. I hope those 3 dot points that we brought up earlier could help spearhead that process. And if you want to get started with working with TechSoup, you can qualify or find your local TechSoup program through TechSoup.global. It will give you a drop-down list of all the countries we operate in, and it will redirect you to your appropriate platform. If you're already part of TechSoup and you just want to have a conversation, you can contact us at apacsales@techsoup.org. That goes through a queue that experts like myself and Lee and Anne have access to, and this is how you can communicate with us for consultations, free consultations. And I'm gonna stop there because I've been talking a lot. I want to hear from you guys. If you have questions, you can drop them on chat or you can unmute as well. I'm gonna stop sharing. Does anybody have questions or concerns? Feel free to unmute or drop them in the chat. And I also hope this session was helpful for you.
So I'm just wondering, like, everybody joined here. Are you already like a member of TechSoup Asia, Hong Kong, or other countries? Yeah, and have you placed any order or encounter any membership or product issue?
Yes, Philippines. Awesome. Thanks, Rose. I think most of you are likely part of TechSoup already. So, by the way, when I say do you have questions, it doesn't necessarily have to be just about the presentation. It could be about anything, right? Anything under the sun. And pardon me, my nose suddenly started itching, so that's why I kept touching it. So apologies if that's a bit distracting. It was a bit for me. Sorry.
And I'm also wondering, like, if any of you are using AI, because I see so many AI meeting notes popping out in the message. Yeah, so
Perfect time to ask Lee.
yeah.
Is an expert in AI.
And even if like have your organization are using M65 for nonprofits or Google for nonprofits, if you want to know more about it, I believe Jet can also does some introduction.
No props. And there's a question here. Consultations can be available. Can be availed. Sorry, availed for free. 100% yes, Rose. The APAC sales email, contact that. That goes to myself and Lee. We are typically the people who run or facilitate these consultations are 100% for free. The only time we will charge you, we will let you know. But typically that's when we have a project in place For example, you need to run a training that is X number of hours, or you need us to do migration. But if it's really just getting pointed to the right direction, getting advice and whatnot, we're not going to block that behind a paywall. So ask away is my book calls and whatnot. We're happy to talk to you, man. There's another question. May I know any local support in Hong Kong from TechSoup? So we have migrated support for Hong Kong to our regional team, so not necessarily local in Hong Kong, but it is within time zone. Most of our team is spread across Philippines, Indonesia, and Taiwan. So while you may not be able to communicate with somebody in person, our team is here to communicate with you virtually.
Yeah, and I also hope you know that it's better that you just ask the question, because sometimes we just need to know your needs, and maybe there will be like more follow up. So please don't stop like you think there should be something, but instead please ask us first. Yeah.
So good follow-up here. We're definitely interested in productivity, particular for fundraising purposes. Rose, I am all ears. I am looking forward to your email. I personally have worked with a shelter before, so I do understand the nuances. I do understand some of the different ways we can approach that from a security and communications perspective. So I'm looking forward to touching base with you.
If I may also add, Jed and Lee. So earlier you guys talked about cybersecurity, communications, productivity. If there are other needs that fall outside of those top three needs that we focused on today, just let us know. And as what Lee said earlier, if you don't ask the question, we wouldn't know and we wouldn't be able to help. So again, your questions, the support that you need may fall outside of those top priorities, and we're here for you.
If I may challenge the other experts here, though, like and brought up cybersecurity, and that's always a fun topic for me. And I was doing my cybersecurity research earlier today. If you were to give one recommendation, just one, for for a newbie in cybersecurity to strengthen their digital security, what would that one golden tip be? Just one.
You're asking us, Jed.
Yes, yes. Sorry,
Okay,
Anne and Lee.
it's okay. Top of mind, multi-factor authentication. So like,
Gotcha.
I know I'm hoping a lot of us have really good, strong passwords, but if you add other layers such as verification through an authenticator app, or through email or text messages or phone calls, just to verify again, having that extra layer of multi-factor authentication really helps. Like I've had a lot of instances where I thought, or my credit card, for example, or my bank account, somebody was trying to make unauthorized purchases, but I knew that they didn't push through because I got notifications, MFA notifications. So that kind of gave me peace of mind. So go for MFA.
Thanks, Anne. And it's a pretty doable tip as well. Lee, how about you?
Well, as Anne talking about MFA, and I just want to mention that you can have that for free if you are using M365 or Google for nonprofits. Yeah, you don't even have to pay for that. And there will be all those, basic cybersecurity for your accounts, and especially notifications for your organization. So, which means that will be better for your infrastructure as an organization. Yeah, and we also focus that a lot. So yeah, if you want to know more, I think that would be like a good start too.
Thanks, Lee. And for me, if I may add just one golden rule, just to kickstart cybersecurity efforts, you can't go wrong with a password manager. Like there was quote before from my colleague Adam. He said there was a study done that you can only remember up to a certain number of passwords in your head. So that's why you tend to repeat passwords, and that becomes a vulnerability in of itself. If you're unsure about that point, well, I challenge you. How many phone numbers do you remember by they have memorized by my like without looking at your phone, right? Like for me, I only know one, which is my mom's for emergency purposes. So that shows you how limited it is. Having a password manager lets you reduce the things that you want to remember to just one very complicated password, and that will basically your golden key. That will also help you generate randomized passwords so that you're not recreating the same thing. Uh, and again, interestingly enough, if you think about it, the only thing preventing an unwanted actor from access to your emails, to your bank account, to your entire identity, virtually speaking, is really just that single line of text, which is your password. So to Anne's point, add another layer to that. MFA helps. And make that single line of text a bit more difficult, use a password manager. There are a ton of free ones. I would highly recommend Bitwarden, 100% for free. And it's also a very secure and reputable provider. I hope that helps.
Well, there is a question about how to get Windows and Office.
Windows and Office. Hang on,
Yeah.
sorry. Here. I'm from Philippines and I'm perfect. We would like to avail low-cost Windows OS and Microsoft Office. Yes. So that's quite easy. Make sure you're registered for TechSoup Philippines. Once you're qualified through TechSoup Philippines, you will be required to go through another qualification process for Microsoft. The reason why is that their licensing procedure happens through the cloud. So they need to be able to identify you as a nonprofit client. So register for TechSoup Philippines, register for Microsoft for nonprofits. Once those are sorted, you go back to TechSoup and you can place the order for Windows through our catalog. If you need help, we can walk you through on a separate call, and we can guide you through that step by step. Weeks ago, it says, okay, so Dimas, or if you're comfortable, could you send us the email that you use to register? We can essentially help you track that. And I'm going to drop, so yeah, we can check that and connect with you after this session. Do you have other questions, folks? Thank you, Dimas. Copy that. I'm going to reach out to you separately as well. All right. We are 6 minutes before the closing of this session. If you don't have any more questions, we're happy to close this down. But if you think of anything, what is the link for the digital assessment, James? You can reach out to APAC Sales because that's arranged ad hoc. So we need to schedule that with you if you want to move forward. So feel free to reach out to APAC Sales at TechSoup.org and we can take it from there. That being said, we're happy to close this session and give you back 6 minutes of your time, 5 minutes from here. And we'll share the recording within 1 to 2 days. All right. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate everything and we'll catch you over email. I hope you take up that consultation offer. We would like to continue this conversation. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Bye.
Thank you. See you.